Twitter and see all of these amazing resources that people produce, and all of that. Teaching is not a one style fits all. You need to find your own niche. Mine is very, very relaxed. I was saying to my students when I was doing this, I said, like, you know, our classes are very free flowing, and I like a conversation in my classes. I find my fifth years are extremely quiet, and I find it hard sometimes. I feel like, oh my God, it's just constantly me talking. And they were saying that, you know, their maths teacher, she likes dead silence in their class, but they like the mix of that dead silence or of the chat. It just depends on you and whatever you're comfortable with as the teacher as well. So I suppose just to bear that in mind. So my top topics for tonight, my learning outcomes, are going to be approaching topics in a typical class. I'm going to look at strategies and resources that I use for both junior and leaving cert. And then I'm going to look at it a little bit at end of year revision. I suppose the main reason for that last one is because it's something that we're all doing at the moment. I don't have third year business this year. I only have first and second and fifth and sixth, and I picked up TY a couple of weeks ago. So I suppose revision is kind of something that we're all doing. So I'm going to share some of my things that I do for that as well. I'm very conscious of the time, so I'm going to talk a little bit fast and keep moving. So approaching the topics in a typical class. I'm very lucky that I'm in an absolutely amazing business department. My colleagues are absolutely incredible. I'm sure they're the same in all schools because business teachers are brilliant. So what we decided a couple of years ago, about 3 or 4 years ago, was to, we have to move classroom. We don't have our own classroom. So we tried to have one 50-year room and one 60-year room that was kind of a business room. Now, it's not always feasible with timetable clashes and stuff. By doing that, we could then have our own posters on the walls that related to business. And so with that, it's worked out really, really well over the last couple of years. And we're really glad that we made that decision, and we're going to continue to try and do it as much as we can. Some of the things that we hang in the classroom, just to give you some ideas of what they look like. So the walking debate signs, I love walking debates. So it's agree, disagree, and not sure. I get a lot of mileage out of them, particularly maybe on a Friday evening where I'm running out of things to do and the kids are not engaged with me, and we can do a nice walking debate pre-COVID, obviously. And it's nice that you could maybe do a thermometer one as well, where they might agree, but they might be leaning slightly towards not sure or disagree, and you can change the signs around. We have a scheme of work hanging in the room as well, which I'm going to show you in a second. We have a map of Europe, which we got from the European Commission in Dublin. I just emailed them and they sent me out so much stuff. They were absolutely so generous with all the stuff that they send out. I would definitely recommend emailing them. They're absolutely incredible. We have a careers corner as well, which needs to be updated because obviously the last 2 years, well, last year we weren't allowed to, the last couple of months we haven't been allowed to hang posters and stuff, and I've kind of let them slide a little bit. So I just have stuff on it like different colleges like commerce that they can study in NUIG or global commerce or whatever, just on different avenues they can go down, like whether it be journalism or just different careers that they can have, and they love to go and check that out, particularly around CAO time as well. I have some inspirational quotes from entrepreneurs as well, and I also stick up the ratio formulas. I have them done on coloured paper on A3, and I have them laminated and up on the wall as well, pre-COVID. So that's what the room looks like that I teach in. This is the scheme of work. So I got this idea from Stacey Kenny. She's a geography teacher, and she's absolutely amazing as well to follow on Twitter to get some ideas from. So she shared her geography scheme of work with me, and I've adapted it to suit our scheme of work. So this is the junior cycle one here. I won't bore you with all the details. I just have in there got the wellbeing indicators, the key skills, and then I just have all of the different plans. I remember the day I printed this off in colour and I got it laminated, and I was so excited that my colleague Brian sitting next to me actually had to take a picture of me with the laminated new scheme of work. I just absolutely love it. And then this is the senior cycle one then here. In Salerno, we like to start with Unit 2. We think it gives the students, kind of hooks them into senior cycle business a little bit. They would have done some of enterprise with us in second year, and I suppose it's just to hook them in a little bit. And then, as you can see there, I will leave Unit 1, Industrial Relations, to the very end of sixth year. I've asked the students, do they like the way that we do it? I've gotten their feedback on it. They say they do, because sometimes the laws might change or they can be a little bit tricky for them, and so they like to do them just before, as the last thing before we head into revision. And also it'll be the first question that they see in the long questions on the exam paper, so they like to do it just at the end as well. So yes, that's our scheme of work for leaving cert. I suppose at the beginning of the year, what I would normally do, so if you're kind of planning towards the beginning of next year, the first thing I do is a student-teacher contract. So it's just like what they can expect of me and what I can expect of them for the year. The main reason I do it is just for business, to refer back to it again when we're doing Unit 1. You talk about the law of contract and all of that kind of stuff. It's just a bit of fun. And if I do have a child who's really bold and not doing their homework, I can say, you said you signed your contract. It's a good kind of talking point to have. I do target grades with them in each of the years as well. I get them to do it in first and fifth year, and then to revise them then in second and third and sixth year. Just, you know, whatever they're aiming for in their final exams. If they're not on track, it kind of helps with, you know, you can say, well, you were working towards this and now you're not, or maybe you're exceeding it and congratulations. I find it good for parent-teacher meetings as well. And I found it good for the predictive grades to look back and see what they had hoped to get, and then in and around what they were getting and stuff like that. I found it quite useful. So the target grades are always good. I get them to write on a piece of paper and hand it up to me, and I also get them to put it into their front of their copy as well, just so they can have it there for themselves too. Another thing I do as well is icebreaker games. I've just created icebreaker games for fifth year and first year for the students to get to know each other, and they're all business related questions. I think I've them shared on SchoolNet. I'm pretty sure they're up there on SchoolNet, so you want to check them out as well. So that's the beginning of the year, and that's how I approach the year. In the actual classes themselves, same as Rachel, I would begin with some sort of recap or with questions. I don't always do the questions. Sometimes I might just quickly recap. It depends on where we're at with timing and stuff like that. I might just recap a little bit. And again, I might do questions as well. I'll let Rachel talk about that. I do something similar to what she does. I generally use the textbook and my own notes. I've created PowerPoints for all of the years for business and for geography. Sometimes I work off them. I work off them more in junior cycle than I do in senior cycle. I kind of just made up my own notes from like looking at past exam papers and stuff like that. So yeah, and I use the textbook there as well. I like to do a little bit of theory and a little bit of written work. I've like just to break it up a little bit because they can get a bit bored, or they can, you know, the rooms are stuffy and they can get a bit lost. So I like to do a bit of written work as well. At the end of every topic, I give the study clicks questions from that topic, and the girls love that. They just inhale them when they get them. I might do 1 or 2 questions with them from again time depending, and then I let them off. And they were actually just saying to me the last day, I actually had forgotten to give it to them for 2 or 3 topics while we're in lockdown, and they were asking me for them. They were saying like for revision they really wanted them and stuff like that. So study clicks is really good. For assessment, obviously I do formal tests. In Salerno we have tests every couple of weeks. So we have October midterms, Christmas tests, March midterms, and then this end of summer tests as well. So we do have a lot of formal tests that we need to work towards. I try and mix that up then with a little bit of maybe Kahoot or a little bit of project work as well. For junior cycle, I find the project work to start it as early as possible, and I base it loosely on the CBA. I call them mini CBAs just to get used to the terminology. I encourage them to do their reflections because I found one of the first years that I was doing it, I kind of did, when I was doing project work, when it came to the actual CBA, they didn't know what reflection was, they didn't know what evaluation was. So I'm trying to bring that in from first year. So we'll say with my first years there a couple of weeks ago, we did a consumer project, and they had to do little leaflets on it and stuff like that, and then reflect on their learning and stuff. So I'm hoping that will stand to them when they go into third year. Google Classroom has been a lifesaver. I just love it. Everything goes up on Google Classroom. Even if I'm just assigning homework in the classroom, I will put it up on Google Classroom and give them the time limit on it and stuff. The girls love it. It's new to our school this year, or towards the end of last year, I think, and they absolutely love it. And it's just invaluable. It's just for storing all of your own notes and stuff. So that's kind of an idea of what I would do in a class. What the students need then, so in first, second and fifth year, they need to have a large Beaver folder because I give them so many notes. I remember a sixth year a couple of years ago said to me, Miss Young, my folder fell on my toe last night, my toenail fell off. I was like, oh, Sorry. So I'd like a really big folder. They also have to have 2 copies. So one is a revision copy, which I'm going to talk about in a second. And then the second one then is like a general notes, everyday homework copy, whatever goes into it. Students in 3rd and 6th year then have 3 copies. I know I'm really harsh on them. So they have the 2 copies that I mentioned there, their everyday notes copy, their revision copy, and they will also have then an exam question copy. So that's just about the folder. So in the exam questions copy, I just put all exam questions, and I'll talk about that in a second. The folder I'm very particular on. I like them to have it in a particular way and stuff like that. Now, it is their responsibility to make sure they have the notes and stuff like that. But I made these on Canva for this year, and this is their table of contents. So this is for the junior cycle for Strand 1. So we've got the unit here. Do they have the notes? And if they do, they can tick it off. Have they revised the topic, say at the end of the topic or coming up to exams, they tick that. They tick then, have they done the exam questions, and then have they revised for their state exam. Same thing again in Leaving Cert Business. Just the different topics there, and then they tick them off as they've gotten them, and to make sure that their folder is up to date. So they stick that in the very front of the folder, and then they have it then for the 3 or the 2 years, depending. Canva is amazing. The amount of things, the only thing is you spend hours on it, tweaking things and doing things, but Canva, Canva, is absolutely unreal. At the beginning of my slides, I put in the syllabus learning outcome. I do it for both junior and seniors. This one here is for senior cycle. I give them the actual, literally word for word from the syllabus, and then I break it down into my interpretation of it. So for this one, I said, like, what does it mean for you? So at the end of the chapter, you should be able to define enterprise, identify the importance of enterprise skills, explain the basic enterprise skills, identify the characteristics, and analyze the importance of enterprise. So I make sure that they know that the people that are setting your exams, this is what they want you to know from the topic. And then I break it down a little bit, because sometimes these learning outcomes can be very difficult for them. They're not student friendly. They're designed for us, I suppose. So it's our interpretation of them as well. So that goes into the first slide of all of my notes. Second thing then is keywords. That's the next slide that goes in. So this is a big one here. This is the biggest one I have for the keywords. I would always encourage them to use keywords to revise. So I will say, at the end of the topic, when you're revising for a test, go back over the keywords and make sure you can either put them into the context of where they belong, or can you define them? So for example, their unlimited liability, can you define that? I also sometimes do little games with keywords just to maybe break it up a little bit. I might say, can you explain how many of these words can you explain? They need to count them and then tell me how many they can explain. Just make little games out of them just to make it a little bit more fun and interactive. I actually haven't done that in a while. I must go back to that. That's the second slide. Throughout the slides, then I generally have 2 different slides. I have my own slides, which are obviously filled in, and then I have blank slides for the girls to fill in themselves. So for example here, this is why would someone start up their own business? So I have this blank slide on the whiteboard. I'll get them to brainstorm with me, and then I have the actual answers then on the next slide, and we can look at them and see which ones we got and which ones we didn't get. But it's important, I think, to keep them engaged and to keep them active. So to get them to write in things is really important as well. I have little games throughout, depending on what we're doing. I suppose it's just handy for me to reproduce every year and to not forget activities or forget where I'm at. They're just handy to have. These are just some examples of some different slides that I have. I also started doing this could be 3 or 4 years ago. I started putting in the years where the particular question has been asked. So for desk and field research, it came up in ABQ in 2018. This took me so much time, it was ridiculous, but I'm glad I did it. And the girls like to know like the frequency of how often it comes up and what's the likelihood and all of that kind of stuff. So that's the exam year and exam questions. Moving in then to the strategies and the resources, and I've just plucked a few that I thought might be useful for people. Like it's not a definitive list or anything. I always say a dice is super handy to have in the classroom. I got mine in Tiger. They're different colors. I think there's about like 10 of them in the packet, and you can just hand them out to students and they can roll the dice. I might give them a list of questions to do, and then they roll the dice. And if it rolls to 2, then they have to do question 2, and then they can keep going throughout. It can be done individually or in groups, depending obviously with COVID as well. I meant to bring them home actually. Another thing one of my colleagues and I did up was a paper dice. So there's actually, if you Google how to make paper dice, they're in there, and we've typed, for example, we did questions on the sources of finance. So we've like little scenarios on them, and then the students have to answer a question on them. And you can say to students that one will be a 20 marker, that one will be a 30 marker, and they have to come up with their own answers to that. They're really handy, and apologies for forgetting them. And then Mr. Raymond on Twitter shared this website last week, and I just think it's brilliant. There's actually a dice on it here. You can also like the traffic light system, random names. There's so many great apps. I'd actually forgotten. I'd seen this when I was doing the PME, and I just had forgotten about it. So thank you to Mr. Raymond for sharing. It's great, and it's great, particularly in COVID where you can't hand out the dice and stuff like that. So absolutely. And it also has the sound level, which I thought was interesting as well, to see how noisy the class is. And so I thought that was really good, and the link is there in the slides. I also meant to bring these home as well. I forgot. The traffic light cups. So I bought these a couple of years ago. I got them from the Paper Cup Company. They're just paper cups, one group of red, one group of orange, and one group of green. I find this really helpful when I'm doing the accounts in junior cycle. So as I'm teaching them, or as they're working on questions, they have the paper cups in front of them. If they're stuck or they don't understand what I'm saying, or they're stuck on a question, they can have it on red and I know to go down to them. If they're on orange and they're not sure, then I can come down to them as well. And if they're on green, then I know they're happy to work away. You probably know yourself from teaching junior cycle accounting, you know, some students get it immediately and some take a little bit more time. And so it's nice to know, who do I need to help right now and stuff like that. I did it this year with COVID. I numbered them and I assigned them the cups. They had it the whole way through, and the girls loved it. They really, really liked it this year. So it was a really good investment, and I've had them for years and they haven't been damaged or anything. They're really good quality. So that's the traffic light cups. This was on Twitter from an English or a teacher teaching in the UK a couple of months ago, and I've actually used it quite recently. It's Stop the Bus Business Edition. Again, I made it on Canva, and it's amazing. So just, you know, again, on a Friday evening class, we might be losing them a little bit. Just give them a letter and they have to come up with a couple of different things. If anyone can think of more categories to add, by all means, let me know, because it's quite short. But it's good fun, gets them interactive as well. And it's good for their literacy and business too. So that was a good one. Business bingo. I made this up a couple of years ago and I rejigged it towards the end of last year. And then I started laminating when we were kind of, you know, teaching online last year, and I had a bit of time in the evening. And yeah, I haven't used it since. But anyway, so I laminated A4 or A3 pages. Again, I think this might be up on Skullnet as well. So I've just got different terms. I have the cutouts and I just pick one and they have to call bingo whenever they get it. There's little bonus questions down at the bottom as well. So like, you know, like what define the term insurance or indemnity or something like that. So just little bonus questions for the group, particularly if there's a tiebreaker as well. Again, great to have these little things stored for Friday evening class, or coming up towards Christmas, or coming towards the end of the year, where you want to keep the focus on your subject, but maybe not exactly move on to something new. And keep an eye on the time. Oh, there's the big business bingo and the bonus question down the bottom. These are some useful websites that I found. Just to let you all know, the BSTAI have a YouTube channel, and this video and hopefully and all the other videos are up there, and there's other free resources up there. Everything is free on the website, so you can go and check them out. Obviously, Phil Curry, absolute king of leaving their business, absolutely amazing. The business guys, I love the visual capitalist. If you don't follow them on social media, go and do that. They're just amazing. For business and for geography, they're just absolutely incredible. Really cool infographics and all of that. Deborah Hogan is amazing as well. Michael Galligan is in there too. CSO is in there. Yeah, just some really good. Oh, the English language support program. It's slightly outdated because it's for the old junior cert course. But if you have a student in your class who maybe is struggling with literacy levels, or maybe English is their second language, that's a really good website to check out. They do lovely introductory topics. It really helps their literacy of the actual subject. Again, a little bit more towards the old course, but nothing that can't be adapted for the new course. I'm looking up at the moment, I didn't have anybody that English is a second language. I haven't needed to use it this year or last year. But definitely another one to check out, really, really helpful. The exam prep then and the end of year revision. So first of all, when I be doing exam technique, you've probably seen this on Twitter. I use the bug technique. So it's box around the outcome verb, underline what's being asked, then glance back at the question before. I've told this story before, so apologies if you've heard it, but I literally sign up for everything. Anything that's going, I sign up for it. So there was a business talk in Carrick-on-Shannon a couple of years ago, and I didn't even know where Carrick-on-Shannon was, I think, at that stage. And I took off in the car after school, got stuck in traffic in Galway. It was really late, and there was only about 15 minutes left of the talk by the time I got there. But when I arrived, it was Caroline McHale giving the talk, and she was using this bug technique, and it was worth driving to Carrick-on-Shannon for the bug technique. I use it with my students all the time, particularly for Leaving Cert students where it's evaluate and illustrate. Really important to put the box around it. I think Rachael uses a different version of it called Hug, so it's more or less the same thing. Really important that students read the question carefully. Also for junior cycle business as well, they are so young, they don't understand these terms like the outcome verbs and stuff. So I think it's important to keep practicing these kind of things with them and get them to read the question very carefully as well. Sometimes they answer what they want to be asked, and it doesn't always go to plan. So the bug technique is absolutely fantastic. I've been doing this year with my first years. I usually do it later, but I'm seeing the benefits of it already, and they're really good. They were doing a question today, and they were excellent at doing it. I mentioned the weekly exam questions, so I give them a copy, or they buy a copy for the weekly exam questions, and they have to do one every week. So I give them the list of questions at the beginning of the year. So this is my senior cycle one here, and I give them questions every single week to do. I've left, this was for a couple of years ago, I don't know when this is for, but I left the Christmas and midterms and the Easter blank just to see where we were at and see what they wanted to revise and stuff. Sometimes I fill them in, sometimes I don't, it just depends. So they know from September, every Monday or whatever day of the week we choose, they have an exam question due. I will either correct it in class, I might pick it up and take it home with me, or I might get them to submit it on Google Classroom, or I might get them, when we pre-COVID, to swap over and to correct each other's to do peer assessment. They love it. After Christmas, it can get a little bit can go by the wayside a little bit. So maybe relax a little bit after Christmas if you're doing something like this, and then come back at it again towards the end of the year or something like that to keep the momentum going. And then they just tick off then when they've got the question done and the date is there for them. Again, that's stuck inside the front cover of the copy, so there's no excuses, they know it's due, and it's really good for revision and for exam technique. I used to do this for junior cycle as well, but I don't anymore. I will talk about that in a second. I thought it was the next slide. So the revision copy then is, sorry, I'm doing after this. The revision copy then, so this is an idea I got from a wonderful teacher down in Cork. Her name is Marie Flynn. And when I heard her speak and I heard her do this, I was like, oh my God, this is like the best thing I've ever heard. And so Rachael, I think, is also doing it now too. So it's a revision hardback copy, basically, that they have to get. Again, Canva, I designed at the front of these. I'm absolutely pathetic. There's my junior cert one in there, and I actually have them covered in like a plastic covering too. So the revision copies, I make them get a 160-page A4 copy. We take a class at the beginning of the year to number all the pages and to set up the table of contents. They then fill it in over the 2 or 3 years, obviously senior cycle and junior cycle. And as Marie said, by the end of the year, the idea is that they scrap the hardback copies and they they scrap all the notes and they just have their hardback copies to look at and to help them revise. So what's in the hardback copy, I've given the list here. I actually had them handwritten, so they're finally typed up. So for junior cert business, it's all the course definitions. So anytime we hit a definition, I say, take out your hardback copy and write in this definition. All the course documents, so your invoices and stuff like that, we have little examples of them in there. All the course calculations again. So for example, I was doing borrowing, interest on borrowing, interest on saving there the last couple of weeks. So I got them to add that in. And again, they'll just have that example there for themselves. One account, so we'll say the one example of like an analyzed cash book, the posting to ledgers and so on and so forth, and the final accounts, they'll have one example of all of those in there, and obviously we'll practice them then somewhere else. Tables of information, so if I want to do a mind map, or if I want them to do like a box or whatever notes they want to take, we've left space for those as well. The different laws that are on the course, so the consumer laws and the employment laws, the different diagrams that might be on the course, so like the channels of distribution, for example. Then the get out of jail topics, I got, it's actually one of Breffney's talks a couple of, about a year ago, is it Breffney? Oh my goodness. So the get out of jail topics, so they're topics that come up quite regularly, or you can have a generic answer prepared for them. And so we've put them in. I haven't used it yet for junior cycle business, but I'm looking forward to it. I have used it for Leaving Cert, and then I spaced them for sample answers. The Leaving Cert one is more or less the same, just we have the ABQs, and I decided this year to change the ABQ section, and I now including 3 ABQs, like I said there, just one when we're doing an introduction, so they have the example there from 5th year. I'll put in their mock one as well, and then just one more coming towards the end of the year. I just finished it with them there, and sample answers, and then all of that, and the get out of jail as well. This is the reflection sheet that I use for all of my tests. I hate correcting, absolutely hate it, and I have made it so much worse for myself, but the girls get a lot out of it, so that's what I keep telling myself. So I designed it like the exam paper, so you have your thing over here, your calculations. Sometimes I might get them to add them up and make a percentage themselves. That is becoming less and less because they can't figure out how to make percentages. I won't go down that road. Encourages reflection then. So when I give back the test, I get them to fill this in. So they'll study, like they'll say what worked well in the test, did they get a great result, and why did they get that good result, what study techniques worked for them, maybe it didn't go so well, and then why did that not happen. The feedback then, this is the most time consuming part, the star and the wish. So something that they did good in, I will tell them, and then something that I wish they would work on for the future. Generally with Leaving Cert businesses that you didn't state and explain, you need to state and explain. At the end of the test, when I hand it back to them, I will give them the key words. Maybe it might be evaluate, maybe it might be illustrate, or it might be a word from a topic, and we'll put the keywords in there. And sometimes I'll get them to write them out fully, depending on the test and how well or how badly they did. So that's the cover sheet. I got this idea when I was in Slern, or in Sion Hill in Dublin. They did something similar, and I've just tweaked it then to suit myself as well. The exam year is then heading towards Leaving Cert. So what I'm doing at the moment is a week a unit. Usually didn't exactly work out that way because they're finishing earlier than I thought, but I tell them we're starting on whatever unit. This is the revision booklet, so I give them a revision booklet. I'll give them a paper analysis. I give them a revision checklist, which I got from Julie O'Keefe last year, and thank you, Julie. And then I give them the one-page summaries, and thanks to Rachel, they loved them yesterday. So this is the revision units. I've done up all of these. A few people had emailed me for them last year, and I've shared them, and I'd be more than happy to share some of them again. So that's for Unit 6. So just the idea is to kind of help them with their state and explain, and to get used to words like illustrate again and all of that kind of stuff. I don't correct every single question because I wouldn't have time, but I give them the first class to go and do it themselves. And then if there's any questions, they can either email me or ask me in class, or whatever works for them. This is the analysis then. So I went down through all of the different questions. So like this is, for example, question 7, and this is generally Unit 5. And then I've put down anywhere that they mentioned price, I have in yellow, and so on and so forth. And you can see then how frequently they come up in part A or part B or part C or whatever. I won't even tell you how much time that took me last year. It was a disgrace, but I'm glad I did it nonetheless. Then this is Julie O'Keefe's one. Thank you, Julie. So just ticking off whether you've got it revised and any questions that you might have on it. And yeah, that's kind of, and the one-page summaries I'll let Rachel talk about. Again, as you can tell, I take out a small forest every time I go to class. Okay, I also do some work on abbreviations, circle the correct answer, true or false, so for the short questions and for definitions questions. So I've done up worksheets on them. So we'll say this is all of the questions that have come up on the matching sections. I've just put them all together in one document, and we can practice them on one day. This is the true or false one, again, getting them to practice that and just making sure that they write in the word true or false, not T or F, or putting in a tick or something. So we practice all of those. I have another one done for the cash flow forecast and all of the calculation questions, so break even and all of that, how many times they've come up. And then all the short questions, I have all the short questions screenshotted and put in. So again, you can see how many times they came up. So all the unit 1 ones are together. And then this is the analysis of the short questions. So like break evens came up and all that kind of stuff. I won't bore you anymore. For junior cert revision, because I can't give them exam questions anymore because they're not long enough and we only have the sample paper and one other exam paper to go on. I took this idea, same as Rachael, from Twitter, and I do the Chile thing. So I give them a topic to study, and then they have to do some sort of a revision on it. I generally start this a couple of weeks after Christmas, maybe coming up to February midterm. No, yeah, it's generally after Christmas actually, because they're going into the mocks for February. So yeah, again, I just took that from Twitter and from Rachael, and it worked quite well last year, other than the lockdown and no exam. I give them exam Bible as well, coming up to the mocks or coming up to the end of the year. It's just giving them suggestions, some general exam texts, generally not anything to do with business, and then some business specific stuff. So this is the example I have here for it. So I remember Matt Hines always said, when the students get the exam paper, tell them to read the front page of the exam paper, just to remind themselves of how much time they have and how many questions they have to answer and all that. This is obviously for the older paper. So yeah, so really important just to settle themselves. And a few people have asked me for that over the last couple of weeks, and I've shared it, and I'll be happy to share it again. I have an updated one done for the new Leaving Cert this year. So that's there. I feel like I've just been talking nonstop. I'm sure everyone's super bored and like gone on their phones and just left the meeting. So thank you so much for listening to me wittering on. I'm delighted to answer any questions. My contact details are there, and if you want to join the Galway branch, Galway at BSTAI, I'd love to have you. And thank you so much.
Wow, that's Lisa. Just before I go into the Q&A, I do have one quick. Have you slept in the last like 5 years or 6 years or however long since you've been a teacher? It seems like every minute you've been preparing these excellent resources, and they're amazing, Lisa, and a credit to you. I'll get to some of the Q&As now. I'll try and go these as quickly as I can. I'm conscious of the time, and obviously letting Rachael get onto her piece. So again, if I don't get through all of these, I'll open up the session again at the end, and we try and answer them then. So. First off, Lisa, how do you approach revising units of learning with junior cert students and with Leaving Cert students?
So for like I was saying to you there just towards the end, I do the chili pepper. So I would give them a topic for a week, say enterprise, and I will go down through that with them in class, and we'll do it together. And then I'll say that their homework that night will be something from that chili exercise. So they have to choose something from here as their revision tool for the week. For Leaving Certs, then, like I said, generally I like to do a unit a week. That has not worked out this year at all, and I'm kind of scrambling. But I give them, again, pick a unit. We do it this year. We started there last week with unit 3 because it's their ABQ units. I'm doing 4 this week. Like I said, I give the paper analysis. I give them those questions. We did an ABQ over that, took me so long, 2 hours to do the ABQ, which is what we were doing. And yeah, and all of that kind of stuff. So that's how I would do that.
Brilliant, thank you. Another question here. Do you get Leaving Cert business students to take notes in a notes copy or distribute notes and get them? So I think we've seen that you probably give a lot of notes through the copybook, but would you hand out physical notes, or is it?
Yeah, I print off all of the slides and I hand them to them. And like I said, they're adapted ones. So some of the spider graphs or whatever will be empty, or maybe a definition might be empty. I'll shine it up on the board and they have to take it down. I generally don't like them to constantly taking down notes, because I would have a lot of dyslexic students in my class that struggle to keep up with the writing. Now, Google Classroom has been a lifesaver because at least I can post it up there. And I've actually started typing my notes for them and instead of writing them on the board. So I can just post them straight to Google Classroom afterwards. But yeah, and I give them the physical notes. I don't think I said that actually. I give them the notes and I get them to keep writing in my slides then as we're going along. And then I might do some sample answers with them. And in that case, they're writing into their notes copy.
Brilliant. Okay, 2 more, and then I'll let Lisa go in and maybe answer any questions she wants in the Q&A during Rachel's piece. So I like this one. What topics do you actually have on those walking debates for junior cert business?
Oh, that could depend now on the mood and whatever, whatever's happening. For some of them I do have, I can't think of any right now. For some of them I do have actual like debates in the slides, and we can do them. I think there's one for the consumer that I do about the ethical consumer. I can't remember what it is right now, but there's in there.
I'll help you out there if you want, Lisa. I do it for rights and responsibilities of an employee and an employer, and I have them walking whether it's a right or whether it's a responsibility. You look like you're stressing there, Lisa. I just said I'd
but like, you know, on a Friday I could easily just say, sure, let's have a debate on this. Walking around the class, or it just depends.
Okay, this one, sorry, slightly off topic, but because I said it answered live, I better do this from Mairead. And it was, I know this is obviously a business session, but she just had a quick one regards accounting, what you do with the students who are flying ahead while others are struggling. Mairead says she gives extra questions for the people that are flying ahead, but they just get bored doing it over and over. So is there any strategy you have?
Yeah, so I same as that. I generally give extra questions, kind of the boring thing. What I've started doing the last 2 or 3 years, difficult this year, but I've actually buddied them up. So I would generally look at them and see who's quite strong and who's weak, and I would buddy them up and let them work together. Sometimes I might work in a group of 4 and a group of 2, depending on the needs of the student and all that kind of stuff. But that's generally what I do. I have no yeah, I have nothing kind of exciting to say about that. That's the main thing that I do. The accounts are very tricky. I found this year in particular, there were 2 extremes. Most of them 100% got it, and I still even have 2 or 3 that are really struggling. And I'm going into the final accounts now tomorrow, next day, and I know it's going to be tough on them again. So maybe I might come back and share something on Twitter if I find the Holy Grail.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks very much, Lisa. So look, Lisa's going to pop into the Q&A now, and if there's any outstanding questions that she has there, because I know there's a few in it, she'll start going through them now. So again, the same story, we're going to hand over to Rachel. If you do have any questions, if you can please put them through the Q&A, that just means that we have an opportunity to answer them ourselves. So over to you, Rachel.
Sorry, I'm just, sorry, I just had to unmute myself there. I don't want to have to follow Lisa. That was unbelievable. I feel very inadequate now following Lisa. So just to give you a bit of an introduction to me, I'm teaching in Dominican College on Griffith Avenue. So I'm teaching in an all-girls school like Lisa. And I am chairperson of Dublin BSTAI. I'm going to talk today a little bit like Lisa. I'm going to talk this evening about my classes and what they look like day to day. I'm going to share some strategies for sharing feedback with my students that I find work for me. I added this in after Breffni's session. I'm going to talk a little bit about group work at senior cycle. A question was asked at Breffni's session a couple of weeks ago, and it actually upset me. About how to get senior cycle students to engage in group work, and I have some very nice group work times with my senior cycle, so I just decided to share that. And then I'm going to have a look at the ABQ and how I approach the ABQ with my students. So I'll start with talking about my classes day to day. Very like Lisa, they're a very conversational style class. It could go in any direction. I could go in with a plan and it can go into a conversation. Any girls that have sat in my class will tell you, and I could come out having talked about something totally different to what I intended to talk about. A lot of my ideas, like Lisa, come from Twitter, and I've included this. Myself and Siobhan O'Sullivan put it together. Well, Siobhan O'Sullivan did all the tech side of it. I just provided a few names, and somehow or another have managed to get my name onto this piece of work. But these are the people I would say on Twitter that you need to be following in order to get your names. And we've shared that through the Dublin BSTAI Twitters and all the BSTAI Twitter. And definitely, if you're new to Twitter, these are the people that you need to follow to gain your ideas. And what I would say about Twitter is you need a system. If you're going to go onto Twitter and collect resources, I would definitely say you need a system. So how I do it is I put them into our scheme of work with hyperlinks. So this is an extract from our scheme of work. And I'm sharing this little extract with the permission of Una and Sinead, both my colleagues in Dominican College, that I would be absolutely lost without. And this piece of work that's been shown here is absolutely a team effort, and I'd be lost without the two girls. But what I do is, or what we do, if we see a resource, we pop it in as a hyperlink into our plan, because otherwise what we were finding was that we were finding these resources, and then by the time you got to the topic, it was gone and you'd forgotten about it and you were scrolling back down through Twitter. So we included it into our scheme of work, and you can see it there. And that's how we plan and how we use Twitter to build up our resources. So my classes start every day with questioning. I don't use every day using lollipop sticks is what I would have done pre-COVID, but since I've started being a traveling teacher again and moving around all the classrooms, the lollipop sticks, I will admit, have gone totally out the window, and it's more me reading or spotting names, and I'm just calling names at random because I keep forgetting, purely because I'm a scatterbrain, and I keep forgetting to bring my lollipop sticks from the staff room to the different classrooms that I'm in. But the plan still works the same. I try to make sure that every child answers a question within the week. And I tick you off on my book when you've answered your question, so that I know that I've gotten to ask everybody a question and everybody in my classroom has spoken within the week. We use notes and we use textbooks. So before I started using the textbook that I'm using now at senior cycle, I was anti-textbook. Lisa gave out to me last year about senior cycle and being anti-textbook, but we've changed our textbook this year, and I'm now very much into my textbook and sending the students back to the textbook and have them highlighting and reading different articles from the text. And I have all my notes done that they're linked now to our new textbook. So when there's a definition in the notes, it's linked in. Like Lisa, they do take some notes. I do give them from some of my topics, I'll give them out the notes, and other topics, they'll put them into their notes copy. But all of my notes I shared on Google Classroom for them. And they have access to everything that's done in class. As I said already, a big chunk of my class goes to discussion and engaging in discussion with the girls. We do a fair amount of group work as well, as much as I can fit in, and I'm so reliant on Lisa. I call it Lisa's revision book. My students actually know Lisa by name and call it Lisa's revision book. I do not take credit for it, so they know that the idea came from Lisa. We use the revision book all the time, and they have, this is my first year using it, so they only started it in September, and to say that I was offered 6 of them for this evening to bring along, and I was actually, they won't be able to see them on Twitter, but they're absolutely mad about it. And then finally, at the end of each chapter, I like to do a test at the end of each chapter. And this year I have it in such a way that they do a Google form element to their assessment, and they do a long question. So the Google forms are made between myself and my colleague Una, that I've mentioned already, that I would absolutely be lost without. So they'll do a Google form. They do it as part of their homework as we come to the end of the topic. And then they'll do at least one long question for me in class at the end of each topic. And it could be 2 long questions, could be 3 long questions, depending on the topic in question. So that's how I would assess. As a result of correcting in state exams, I have changed, I suppose, my approach to my classes. And I've learned, I suppose, that we need to focus on quality and not quantity. So definitely, and I definitely find this since I moved to teaching girls rather than boys. Girls will write you reams and reams and reams of information. But I find we need to get them focused on quality and not quantity, that they're giving us quality answers and not just pages and pages of information that don't gain them the answers. So they'll see that in my notes. I try to focus on hitting in on keywords, key terms all the time. Breffney pointed out a spelling mistake and I didn't fix it. Question interpretation. I just spotted it there. Question interpretation, right? So I'll fix it before we share it. But That's another thing that I find that that I found from the correcting. Students didn't needed to look into their how to approach the question and what's being asked and answering exactly what is being asked. And that has become a major focus of my classes and a major focus of the group work that I get my students to engage in. And that's all come as a result of engaging in the state exams process. And then the final thing that I've changed in my approach since I corrected was this alternate layout, alternate question layout. And I have an example of this up here. So I corrected personally in 2018. So I corrected that question there on the left, and to say that it threw students, I'm in no doubt that every teacher in the country had covered break-even charts, and every teacher in the every student in the country had done their break-evens. That 2018 question was the first time that it was laid out like that, and it threw the students. And then 2019, we saw it going back to what we were more used to. So as a result of seeing how badly that 2018 question affected students when I was correcting, I've become very much aware of making sure that we're not just, I suppose, relying on the way that the exam question always asks it, and trying to throw the questions at students in slightly different ways, even though you're asking them the same information. So I suppose what I'm saying there is when you're making up your class assessments and when you're making up your questions to do in class, that we do need to look at how can I throw this same question at them in a slightly different way, because that seems to be the trend. If you look at the last couple of years of exam papers, it does seem to be the trend that there is that change around. And I can say with absolute certainty that it did throw them when I corrected there in 2018. So it's just something that I've brought into my classroom as a result of correcting. Okay, so I did say I'd talk about the question, and I kind of spoke about it already. I am adamant about this. This is my thing, and they hate me for it, and they know that this is how my class is going to start, that you'll be asked a question. I was involved in a project during my time in St. Peter's College about wait time, and I missed this poster so much. I had this poster on that all the teachers in St. Peter's had that poster on the back of their classroom walls to remind them to wait. So just to bear that in mind, that when you ask the question, give them all the time to think about it, and you can see the quality of their answers improving when you do that wait time. So us as teachers, we would just want to get it done. We want to get the answer out there. If you can wait that 5-10 seconds and give everybody the chance to develop their answer, at least it means that everybody has thought of an answer in the room. So even if you don't get to ask everybody in that day, well, at least you know they've had the time to develop their answer to the question. So definitely wait time is something that has, I suppose, transformed my teaching since I started being very strict on myself with it. Okay, the second thing that I was going to speak about this evening is sharing feedback with your students. So I like to share, so I have a quote in there that we all need we all need people who will give us feedback. That is how we improve. Bill Gates. This is something, actually, now that I have a quote up, this is something that are in my notes all the time. I'm mad about inspirational quotes and entrepreneurs quotes, and I have them scattered into my notes all the time, just to try and trigger some discussion in the classroom. And I think it works really well. And even if it's just that you get into a discussion of, well, who is Bill Gates, or who is whoever the famous person that you've chosen, and it's just increasing the students' real life examples as well as you work through the course. Sorry, I went on a tangent. That's my class in a nutshell. So yeah, feedback. So I like to give my students both verbal and written feedback. Verbal feedback to me is very new since, I suppose, this lockdown in January. Verbal feedback was something that I very rarely did. But if anybody out there is using Google Classroom, they have to get their hands on Moot. It's a Chrome extension, and it was my absolute lifesaver during this lockdown. You could record 90 seconds worth of a voice note to your student and send it to them. So that is how I gave all my feedback during this lockdown. And the feedback from the students on it when we went back into school was that it was absolutely brilliant. They said that they felt like they were back in the classroom. They were able to, it was much easier for them to develop their learning, and it was much easier for them to kind of progress through. And I found that it worked really, really well. I ended up doing analysed cash books with my first years, and I found that being able to use Moot and to type them through their question when they were struggling with a question, to be able to use Moot to give them the feedback was absolutely brilliant. So anybody who is using Google Classroom, I can't recommend that highly enough. The other way then that I give feedback is through written feedback. And last year, through a conversation with actually my own business teacher, who I have the privilege of teaching, she's going to kill me now she's on this, but I actually have the privilege of teaching beside my own business teacher, my own Leaving Cert business teacher, the girl who inspired me to be a business teacher. But the two of us were sitting having a chat last year, and we were saying that, oh, we write out the same things all the time. So the two of us developed this, and we're happy to share it we're happy to share it if anybody would like it. But instead of writing out the same thing all the time, all our students have a copy of this key. So if we want to give them a piece of feedback, a piece of generic feedback, rather than writing out the same thing over and over again, we'll put the abbreviations on the side of their test so that they can go to this and then and understand where they've lost marks. Feedback from students is that it works very well. I also take a note of, if I say write ROV, or okay, read the outcome verb. So if I write that on a piece of feedback, if I'm writing it multiple times, I can make a note of that in my diary so that I have some, I suppose, feedback for parents then when it comes to the parent-teacher meetings, or if the student becomes frustrated that their results aren't improving, well, at least I can say, well, I wrote read the outcome verb 6 times on your last couple of pieces of work. So you're obviously not reading the outcome verb. We need to work on that so that I can give them more, I suppose, detailed feedback in how to improve going forward. So thanks, Sinead, for helping me to come up with that. The other thing then that we have is success. I use is success criteria. These are all, I just want to say from the outset, these are all made with the students. So they're not perfect. They are, as we're coming through the topic, we make our set of success criteria. And then when I give them a test or an assessment at the end of the topic, I will print these out as you see them here. And if a student forgets to do something in the success criteria, I'll highlight it. And this idea kind of came from Michael Galligan. I'll highlight the thing that they've forgotten to do, so that the student knows where they've gone wrong and they know where to go back and have a look. So for instance, if a child puts, or if a student puts their money in on the wrong side, well, I'm going to highlight there in the analysed cash book, money in on the debit side where they've put it on the credit side or something like that, just to highlight to them where they've gone wrong. I find that this works really well with junior students, and I try to use it with senior students as well, but I think it is definitely more successful with my junior students. Okay. Yeah, so the third thing I'll talk about this evening is group work at senior cycle. I love group work. I love working in groups. I love listening to students having the chats. And I do think it's harder at senior cycle. But I do think there's definitely value for it at senior cycle. So I'm going to give an example of a couple of the things that I do at senior cycle to get them involved in group work. And sorry, that's the question that came in at Breffney's talk. So first, one of the major things that I do, and I actually did this last week, and I do it as part of the Managing Change chapter, to show the stages of forming a team. So to show your forming, storming, norming and performing stages. So we actually did this because I thought I was going to be able to do this, and I had to think outside the box, obviously with COVID and social distancing. So we thought a little bit outside the box, and we have picnic. We're very lucky. We have loads and loads of picnic tables outside that have been put in since COVID in our school. So I brought the girls out to the picnic table, begged them to keep their masks on, even though they were outside. So we had masks on and we were outside, and we went in groups of 3 because that's our limit on our picnic tables in school. So everybody is given, if you haven't looked this up, I do recommend going and looking at the TED Talks on it, but I'll give it a brief introduction. Every group gets 20 sticks of spaghetti, a yard of tape. Well, I give a meter of tape, a yard of string, and I give a meter of string, and you get 1 marshmallow. So the rules are that you have to build a tower with your supplied kit. The tower must be freestanding. The marshmallow must be on top, and you will be marked on teamwork and the height of your tower. So last Wednesday we had a nice sunny day, and I brought the girls outside and we built these towers. What we didn't take into account was that they would have wind as a factor as well. So it was a little bit of a disaster, I'm not going to lie. We had girls building wind tunnels and out of their bodies to try and make sure that they stayed standing, to make sure their tower stayed standing. But it was nice to see them engaged in group work again, and to maintain their social and so maintain that social side to the classroom. And then when we went back into the classroom, I showed them the TED Talks. There's a TED Talks that goes with it that tells you that kindergarten students are the best at this. So they were all feeling very hard done by that their towers had fallen. But most importantly, when I put up the stages of forming a team, when I put up forming, storming, norming, and performing, they could see that their teams had actually gone through all them 4 stages in the time that they were outside, and they really showed an understanding of that concept. So it did work really well. Another thing that I do all the time, and I have done it out on our picnic tables again this year as well, is this team games tournament. So what you'll need for the team games tournament is you'll need a deck of cards, a questions book and an answers book. And I have this particular team games tournament, I have shared, I have it in a folder ready to share at the end if anybody would like to try it. And you'll need a scorecard. So basically what happens is, did I put the rules in? No, I forgot to put the rules in. That's great. But basically what will happen is you will pick a card, and in your question booklet, there will be a question related to that card. So say, for instance, I pick the 5 of hearts. So you'll go to the question, you'll be 2 on 2. So there's 4 people. So you're in a team of 2 and you're competing against another team of 2. If you get the 4 of hearts, you'll go to the question book and you'll take out the question for 4 of hearts. And you will have to answer the question for 4 of hearts. If you answer it correctly, you get 4 points. And then it goes back and forth, and you get the value of the card in points. I think it's if you get a jack, you pick again, and the question is doubled. So I pick a jack and then I pick the next card and it's a 4 of hearts. Well, then I'm going to get 8 points for that question. They absolutely love it. It's great for this time of the year for revision. And I'd made them up using just exam questions. And they really get into it, and there's definitely a sense of ownership, and you can't let your partner down, so you have to know your stuff if you're telling them that you're going to be doing it. So I really recommend that. So that's an example of the question sheet there. And then the other time that I use group work is for exam questions at the end of a topic and for ratios. So I went through this when I did my This Is How I Teach with Breffney, and I have actually linked it in the slide notes here, that This Is How I Teach. But basically, to teach ratios, I use group work all the time. So I don't teach ratios on the board. I hand out this 1-page summary, and I hand out a question, and I send them off, and I get them to do all the maths themselves. And I just fill in the blanks, and I kind of sort it out. But they don't need us business teachers at Leaving Cert. They don't need us business teachers for the most part, teaching them how to make a percentage and teaching them how to do a ratio, because they've done that in maths, hopefully. So that's how I teach ratios, and I find it really helpful. And then I go back and I'll teach the comments after they've done that part. So that's another group work thing that I'll do. And then the other really nice group work thing that I like to do is using Michael Galligan's, if you haven't used Michael Galligan's website for business, you need to get on it. But egs.ie/business, I would very often, when I'm coming to the end of a chapter, print off Michael's list of exam questions for that topic, bring it in, put them into groups and divide them off and let them come up with all the states that they would give for that question. And we make mind maps out of it, or we get one group to be an expert in one question and we kind of play around with it like that. But I find to get them really engaged when you're giving them exam questions, they're so motivated. They're so motivated once you mention exam questions, but that could be, Lisa would probably agree with me, that could come with teaching girls. They tend to be very motivated by exams. Okay, the final, I'm sorry, I just need to speed up a bit, but the final thing then that I want to speak to about this evening is my ABQ strategy. I actually am quite proud of this. I really, really like this. This is kind of a new thing to me in the last kind of 2 years, but I really like this way to approach ABQs because I absolutely despised ABQs until I came up with doing it this way. So first of all, this is another little extract from our scheme of work, slightly different to Lisa. We prioritize the ABQs in our school. So we start, like Lisa, we start with Unit 2, and then depending on the years in the units in focus for that particular cohort's ABQ, we change around our scheme of work. So this is just the extract from this current set of 5th year's scheme of work. So they started with Unit 2. They then did Unit 5. We've completed Unit 6 and we're currently on Unit 4. And we probably won't finish Unit 4 this year. We had intended to, but we probably won't, given all that's gone on. But we'll change that around every year then, depending on which units are focused for the ABQ. So that's the first thing. So it means that we're ready and able to do appropriate ABQs in 5th year. So to do the ABQ, I use a jigsaw strategy. So I divide the class into groups, and I get some of the groups to deal with question 1, some of the groups to deal with question 2, and some of the groups to deal with question 3. And their job is to become experts in their question before they ever read the ABQ. So if it's on planning, they need to go off and become experts in all the theory surrounding planning. If it's motivation, they need to go off and become experts in motivation. And then they will read the ABQ based on their question, and they'll get their links and they'll come up with their answer, and then they'll go and bring that to another group. So we'll split them all off then into different groups. And that's just for the first and second ABQ that I'll do with the class. After we've done 2 ABQs, I always build up success criteria, and I actually meant to take a picture of these in school. They're actually up on the wall in the classroom that I teach business in, but I forgot to take a picture. But they build up success criteria of what makes the perfect ABQ. So at the moment, we're in the middle of building this up at the moment with the 5th years. So it will be, one of the success criteria that's on it is that every point has a direct link from the text. Every point has a heading, is another one that they came up with. So they build them up themselves. I can't remember all the different ones that they came up with. And at this point, we have a whole school strategy. And I know Lisa went into bug, but it's exactly the same. We just use the whole school, we just use the whole school strategy of hug. I was trying to move this. So it's highlight the keyword, or highlight the keywords, underline what you're going to talk about, and then glance back. So it's the exact same strategy. It's just that we use hug in our school, and all students have the bookmarks there that I have on the side. And I would be adamant as I'm teaching ABQs that they should be referring back to that all the time. Yeah, so that's my strategy for ABQs, and I find that it works really well. Other teachers might find something different, but I do think that this is working really well, and I like that they've done I like that they've done the ABQ units in 5th year, so it just leaves us open to working on ABQs as we go through. So I gave hint there. I'm just done there now. So thank you very much. I've got my contact details there and Lisa's if you have any questions for us.
And absolutely, we do have some questions coming in now, Rachel. So listen, that again, I honest to God don't know where you two ladies get the time to do all these resources. I'm chasing tails half the time anyway. Rachel, let me start by asking you. The first question that came through was from Claire. Yeah, I'm sometimes with Claire on this. What textbook do you use? You mentioned one earlier on. She's allergic to textbooks. You know, Claire.
Hold on, I forget the name of it. Isn't that terrible? Yeah, down to business, Gavin Duffy for Leaving Cert. I just think it's absolutely fantastic. We've just changed to it this year, and we actually only had a discussion about it during the week about how good it is and how happy we are with the choice of it. So yeah, I know we're not meant to be plugging books, but I do really rate that book.
Yeah, there's a lot of good people, including some included in this seminar, who released really good books lately, but I'm not going to get...
Yeah, we're not naming any of them people that wrote really good books lately.
Anybody's book on it. It's not what this is about, but yeah, just look it up. It's very good.
That will be the book that we'll use for junior cert.
Okay, thanks very much, Claire. In relation to Moot or Moat, do your students also need to download that?
No, it's an extension in Chrome. It's an extension in Chrome, and it actually comes into your Google. When you get the extension in Chrome, it actually comes into your Google Classroom. So when you go to give your feedback, it's right beside your chat, and they can access it then through Google Classroom. They don't need to download anything.
Brilliant, very helpful. So a good question here from Keen. In relation to group work, I think as teachers, we all do love doing it, but it can take up an awful lot of time. And there were some other questions which Lisa and I have been answering around, you know, times of the year now where they're maybe struggling to get the syllabus finished and stuff like that. So how do you manage doing the teamwork exercises with getting through the course?
I would have always been afraid. I would have always been afraid of that, but I think you do. First of all, I would say I think you need to teach the course a couple of times and you realize that you actually do have time. Yes, it's a long course, but you do have time, and I think that comes with having taught the course a couple of times. You kind of calm and you realize that you do. But in terms, I would always use a flipped classroom kind of approach if I'm worried about time. So I'll send them on, and I find that a lot easier now with that textbook. But I would definitely send them off to do some of it themselves, or to become in prepared for whatever the topic is that we're going to do, so that they've read it in advance, and it's more me just answering questions at that point when they come in. So I do think you have to put a little bit of it onto them if time is an issue, because I would prefer to put a little bit onto them and have time to do all the activities than have it all teacher led. But that's just me. Yeah,
I love the point that you kind of alluded to it, that when you do a teamwork exercise, you're often covering more than one topic as well. So
yeah.
You mentioned the marshmallow was maybe a bit of an enterprise challenge, but also then you went through the team working. And I think that when we are doing team working tasks, if you can recall, like this could stretch over 4 or 5 different units, and you know the students remember it. So don't be afraid to. They're the stuff they remember. They will forget the lessons of us just explaining and answering the board, like we're all maybe prone to doing a bit too much. Good question from Keen there. Okay, getting just lots and lots of other comments coming in. Girls from people just saying how great this was, and thanking you for all the work that you've done. Mary, then I suppose just in relation to your question, yet anybody who signed up for this webinar would have given us a registered email address, and my understanding is that both Rachel and Lisa are going to be sending out the notes to everybody over maybe the next day or two that has registered for this webinar.
I put mine into the chat there before I started, but I will send them out as an email as well to everybody who registered it.
Yeah, and also guys, the certificates as well for the event today are included in that. So I am pretty sure we have gotten through all the questions that have come through today. So I suppose on behalf of myself, on behalf of all our Business Study Teacher Association members in both Galway, Dublin, Cork, anybody who's joined into the session, certainly for Lisa and for Rachel, just thanks so much for giving up your time, and again for then sharing your resources after this. I know sometimes teachers tend to be very protective of their resources. We've always been a community that seems to help each other, but the stuff that you guys are going to be sending out today, we're very conscious of the hours that you have both put into this, and to give them up to people is an incredibly kind gesture. So again, on behalf of all of us, we've had over 200 people who've attended this tonight, to say thank you for that. It's very, very generous, and again, will be very well received by all the members. So thank you.
Yeah.
So guys, if you do have any more questions, then you can pop them in. Otherwise, that's us. We're done for tonight. I'm sure Lisa and Rachel are going to be looking about the Q&A in the chat. So by all means, fill them up with compliments. Send them off away happy, because we might need them to come in again and do these. So the more compliments, the better. These are very good. Thank you.
Lisa, there's a question there about where to find your exam Bible. It's not shared anywhere, sure it's not.
No, it's not, but if it's okay with you, Rachel, what I'll do is I'll share it with you, and when you're sending out the notes, you can send out. I'll also send some of my the units of learning for Leaving Cert. I'll send those out as well. And there was something else that someone asked me for, and I'll send all of that to you, and you can, well, if you don't mind. I mean,
I have no problem doing that. That's
a bit of extra work on you, but I don't mind sharing them. Absolutely no problem.
Thank you very much, Vera. That's a lovely comment. She said she would listen to you girls all night, because I certainly know she's not referring to me.
Well, thanks.
Thank
The best webinar in a while. Glad I logged in. Thank you very much, anonymous attendee. Okay, I was going to say it's a weird name, but I realize now that it's the default. Again, for anybody logging on as well, just be conscious, guys, with the resources that both Rachel and Lisa have shared. You don't need to be hitting all of them. I would recommend just maybe even pick just one that you can try between now and the rest of the year. And
absolutely.
Bring an extra one. You know, it's very important.
You definitely need to find what works for you. You know, sometimes, like, someone might have given me something and I tried to use it in my class and it just doesn't work because it's not my own work or whatever. So just be very conscious of that.
And another thing, just a message I got on Twitter from somebody recently about how do we do it and how do we keep it up. I think something to remember, especially for NQTs that are on myself, like I'm teaching 7 or 8 years. I don't know how long you're teaching, Lisa, but it doesn't happen overnight. It's built up over the years, and neither of us started like this. So just to NQTs out there, it doesn't start like this. You get there.
You need to build
I've had 2 different people message me about it on Twitter recently, and it's just something that's kind of sticking in my head. You will get there. It's firefighting at the start.
Big time. Yeah.
For people asking about the certs, again, guys, they're in the chat, not in the Q&A, they're in the chat. So if you pop into the chat there, you'll be able to find that as well. And just for anybody who's looking. Again, this is let's go through just more. Again, thank you. Claire, send us your drive. Might hold off on that one. Thanks so much. Your resources are amazing. Can't wait to implement some of the ideas. Thanks a million for the great hours spent. I'm off to be creative on Canva now. Thank you very much, Lisa. That's from Emma. Fantastic webinar. Thank you very much. Brilliant, both of you. That's from our very own Michael Galligan. Thanks, ladies in Breffni. Brilliant. Excellent webinar. You need to set up a business website like the business guys that share all the fantastic. Well, the good news is that I know that the girls or the ladies, they share an awful lot of it through the BSTAI website. So if you do go on to the BSTAI.ie, you're going to get most of them anyway. And again, joining your local branch gives you an opportunity to get them and just get access to so many other resources as well that they put out. But that could be an idea for the pair of you, Lisa and Rachel. This could be the business guys, business girls.
Might have a chat about that, Lisa.
Might, I mean, we have all the work done, so I don't see any issue there with it.
This is what it's all about.
Lisa, there's a question there for you. Lisa, do you actually print the notes with blanks for students or ask them to print from Google Classroom and bring to class?
I print, and I know I'm in a very, Caroline opened my eyes to this, I'm in a very unique school. I don't know if we've no limit on how much we can print. So I have literally taken out forests. I mean, the rainforest is just in my 6-year folders. I know I'm very, very lucky. I do appreciate that. I get to print them.
Okay. Let me see. Guys, in relation to the slides, again, I'll just say that they are going to be going out to people afterwards. So I have put up a few links for Rachel's that have been sent up there. There's also a certificate of attendance that's gone up. So by all means, kind of we'll try our best There might be an option, Rachel, in sending out the slides. We send out the certificate of attendance as well, or is that all?
No, yeah.
Oh, of course. Well, yeah, I suppose they had to be here in the chat.
You had to be here to get the certificate of attendance. Well, I put the link for it into the chat again.
Yeah, I did it. It's in the answered questions. So if anybody is looking for it, it's in there. It's also in the chat at the bottom. So, so yeah, brilliant. Okay, Aisling, thanks very much. Your nice comments while we're logging in. Another question for you is, Rachel, if you want to take that one, is how much homework do you give to senior cycle students?
Oh, I'm really bad at this. I'm very bad at remembering to give homework to senior cycle students. Oh, I'm really shocking. I'm doing well if I give them a question a week. If I'm really honest, I am awful. I do tell them that I want them to be learning their stuff, and that I focus on the stuff that I would correct is definitely their tests. Well, I don't know what it is. I just can't. I'm brilliant at giving homework in maths, but I'm absolutely useless at remembering to give homework in senior cycle. I tried a few years ago a homework schedule, so I gave it out in advance, and then sure I didn't get to the topics that I wanted to get to. Oh, disaster. So not very much would be my answer to that. At least I can see you're making faces.
Yeah. No, I'm the exact same. I was actually really good when we were in learning online. I was really good at the end of class and giving homework, really, really good. But when I'm in class, forget it. Like you, I'd be lucky if I get one bit of homework a week. I remember a parent sat down in front of me at a parent-teacher meeting, and she said, "You're not big on homework, are you?" And I was like, "Sure, I covered it all in class." And learning at
I
all.
have to say, I don't know that I value it enough.
What I found with homework, whenever I did it, I'm a bit like you, Lisa, to an extent with the copybooks. My students have their separate homework copybook, and I use that as their revision guide. So whenever I give them a piece of homework, the next 2 pages have to be left blank. So it's their question, and then the ideal answer goes in on the next 2 pages. So a student is basically able to compare them side by side. And I've run through that. And I used to, when we were in class, give them 1 a week. But a bit like that, there's weeks where I'm just going to miss them. But I found that students would often come back to me. Now it's nowhere near the quality of your revision book that you have, but they would say that by the end of it, that's what they were going to. That was their homework copybook, and just looking at the ideal answers, because they remembered why they'd missed out, and they begin to see the progression in their answers, and that state expand comes in an awful lot easier when they're having it. But everyone's different. What works for you? You know?
Yeah, excellent. Again, yeah, what works for you? Exactly. I love that idea, though I don't think I can force them to get a 4th copy.
Michael Galligan just texted me there, and he was like, "Leaving their business 5th year, written, couple of term, once a week to me is tons about homework."
What, pardon?
So leaving their business, actually we could probably unmute Michael, but leaving their business 5th year, written, couple of times a term, once a week to me is tons of homework, I'm guessing.
Michael has a great strategy for doing homework. Again, I'm not going to, but he
I want to see, can I unmute Michael?
He spoke to me about it. Anybody who is listening on, when it came to Michael's homework strategy, what he does is he doesn't allow students to write out answers. So if they have a question that's worth 20 marks, they have to give them back the 4 key points, and then they have to give 2 keywords explaining. So what 2 keywords would you include under that stated point? So he's essentially saying that a 20-mark question, he might have 12 to 15 words to correct, but it's structured with the stated point and then 2 keywords underneath, and then he'll award the 5 marks. He says most students know how to write. It's getting those keywords in. It saves him a whole bunch of time. And then when it comes to correcting, they can flip it around in the classroom an awful lot easier and peer assess and peer correct. And I did love that as a homework strategy as well. Just like you 20 odd students, and you're trying to get through them, especially business answers, and students love to write essays. So again, just back on that. I'm
just reading the messages there about homework. Emer Tracy said, "I don't give homework to leaving certs either, Rachel. Homework when needed. They know when you give homework that it's meaningful. I'm bad at giving homework, so I don't think we're on our own."
Yeah, it's good to know. Yeah,
I think there's a group of us in it.
Yeah, I think Laura's
and Laura, so happy to hear. I always feel under pressure to give homework just for the sake of it. We do so much in class, sometimes homework is excessive. Oh, I'm so glad we're all on the same page.
Me that cool teacher. See, I've never been that cool. I do not want to give something about it.
I actually thought it was a flaw in my teaching that I don't give homework.
Me too. I often worry about it. You're right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, think about it this way, Lisa and Rachel. If you were correcting all that homework, you wouldn't be preparing all these good resources. So, you gotta weigh it up. It's only 24 hours in a day,
I love teaching. Obviously I eat, breathe, sleep teaching. I mean, poor Kieran is inside minding the dog at the moment, but I have to say correcting is the one thing I just absolutely hate. I just hate it so much.
I would make a PowerPoint for 5 hours, but ask me to correct for an hour and I'll crack.
Yeah.
So I'm very conscious of both Lisa's and Rachel's time here, and that we still have 126 people hanging on listening to, well, I wouldn't say jabber, it's still great information coming through, but again, maybe if you don't have any more questions for the girls, you can log off now.
Somebody there asking about the table of contents for your revision book.
It's in slides. I feel so inadequate that I didn't share these somewhere, but they're in the slides, and when you send them out.
I have one done for a page of how many pages I put to each. I'll share with that as well if they want.
Yeah, I specifically didn't actually put in the pages, and I'll tell you why, because I actually have changed it quite a few times. It depends on you, it depends on your class, it depends on, like I said there, this year I actually changed it to put in 3 ABQ questions because I found that I didn't have enough space, and work through it yourself. Like I sat down.
The best thing you can do is go and buy the copy yourself and
do it yourself. And you might put in more definitions or less definitions. Again, it's up to you what you want to include in it. Or after Breffney's thing was it with Ross? You did that?
Yeah, Ross Horgan had to get out of jail.
I added that in as well. So like I purposely didn't put in the page numbers because of that, because it's very much up to you, and I want to leave that creative space there for you. Or you might think of something else, and if you do, please let me know. I would be delighted to add it.
Refuse to share anything with you, Lisa. Just point blank.
Fair enough.
We're all take.
I love this comment about homework. Work when you're supposed to be working and rest when you're supposed to be resting.
Yeah, dude, there's a motto. Where is that a little bit later on?
That's what I'm going to say now in my next parent-teacher meeting when I'm asked about homework.
Again, anybody, Sinead there had mentioned about her email isn't maybe properly registered. You had to ask a friend for a Zoom link. So yeah, Sinead, your best bet is if you go on to the Dublin, I'm not sure what branch you're with, Sinead, but if you go on to either the Galway branch on Twitter, or if you go on to the Dublin branch on Twitter, or whatever your local BSTAI branch is, all of them are open to DMs.
She just
also have the link for signing up. So if it is a Dublin branch, we're using Eventbrite this year. But I think Rachel might be asking you to just send it to her now, and she might get it.
I'm just I'm just going to send you my email, Sinead, and if you just want to email it to me, and I'll just reply to you.
I just checked my emails there. I've loads of emails. I will get back to you in due course. It won't be tonight.
Okay,
I regret putting up my email.
What I'm going to do now is I'm certainly going to stop the recording of the session.
Oh God, I thought we'd well stop that.
No, well, to be honest with you, I figured there'd be a lot of good questions coming in through there. So I'm going to stop the recording now, and then again we can let the people linger off and cut off. So thank you very much, everybody who still watched this recording. All the other recordings are also on the BSTAI website, and if you're watching this, just remember that James Doyle's economics session is taking place next Wednesday, the 28th. So again, the link will be sent out for that, so tune in. Thank you.
I thought it was